Hi everybody, how are you? Greetings, salutations, and lots and lots and lots of love to you. How are you? This is Briggs. So the video I want to do today is, I guess, with regards to a topic called spiritual maturity. So I've been moving through my Ascension course notes today, and I actually went over this, and it sort of aligns with the personal story that I'm not going to share the personal story, but I guess the teaching from the experience is what I wish to share, and it links in with this topic of spiritual maturity. And in essence, I guess there's other videos that I've done around discernment, especially in this sort of in light of where we are at the moment, is asking of us to be discerning, to stand in such high integrity, to clear our energy fields so that we can stand in purity, in true light, so that we're not in a false light matrix, and also for us to be spiritually mature so that we can make wise decisions with regards to where we take out the sword, all right, and make a standpoint and draw the line in the sand and create a boundary. Okay, I just did a video on the sacred no, so that is important, because through that boundary work, and moving through that kind of work and having your sovereign no's is also being discerning. However, there are opportunities that are given to us and maybe repeating patterns, so watch out when there are patterns that are repeating, and they may be big or small. It's sometimes more difficult to notice when the trigger is something smaller, meaning it doesn't cause as much of an emotional upset to you, meaning you can kind of sweep it over, or you may even decide it's such a small thing that I am going to say something, all right? The point I'm trying to make is, when these repeated patterns come, you have an opportunity to be triggered, to feel the emotion, and then come back to neutrality. Okay, see how that makes you feel. In essence, this is doing the work. When you are in a neutral space, and I mean those of us that have been doing personal transformation work for a long time, I'm sure would have come across the term emotional intelligence. And we know that when emotions are high, intelligence is low. But when those emotions are high, or when we're feeling it, and sometimes it can get confusing in the spiritual work and this ascension game, because we get asked to feel it, feel everything. Feeling is healing, etc., etc. So yes, feel it, but you do not need to be in response straight off the bat, okay? You can feel it, take time, come back into neutrality, and then you can make a wise, grounded, centered decision on what to do. So this specific example, this personal example that I have, made me sit down and actually move through an exercise. This exercise, in essence, asks you to take a look at the trigger. So usually involves a person, all right? So let's say Jesus upset me because he resurrected on the wrong day, all right? Just taking a random example, okay? So XYZ person upset me because, and you put the emotion in there, so upset me or triggered me or disrupted my flow, whatever the emotion is, the person and the trigger, the actual experience. So you're going to take that and you're going to move through it, and you're going to speak to your needs. What do I need this person to do to rectify the situation? What advice do I have for this person speaking to this emotion that can rectify this situation for me? So what advice can I give them that assists me through my healing process? And we move through these things, and we describe this person, okay, in the emotion that we're feeling now, which is nice because you've come to neutrality, you're revisiting the situation, coming back to that emotional trigger and the memory that sits within the cells. Remember, This is where emotion is stored in the cell, so we can go back to it, revisit it, and write down, our answers to this particular exercise very vigorously and very heart-centered, feeling all the emotions. Then it asks of you, once you've done that, so in essence, you're feeling the trigger experience through this particular exercise. Then it's going to ask you, Jesus upset me because he resurrected on the wrong day. Is this true? Okay, so basically you're switching it around. And what it's asking you to do is take a stance from the other person's perspective, okay? Or just merely asking you to change your perspective to wear that person's shoes for 1 day or for that experience of time, and it's asking you to switch it. Is it true? What if you looked at the situation and the trigger and asked yourself, is it a lie? Okay, is what this person did and how it makes you feel a lie? So what it does is it begins to train the brain and the neural pathways into another way of thinking about how this happened. And what's really powerful about that is it allows you to detach from the narrative, the emotions surrounding that narrative, and the story, all right? And again, this is super, super powerful because we don't do it enough. And we sit and we feel the passion of our story. And the more we add energy and emotion to that story, the more real it becomes. And we know this, we've seen it. People just, and they live by their story, and the story becomes juicier. It becomes, and that was actually part of my exercise, was this person upset me because he enmeshed a story that was not part of our original story, and that's what upset me. Okay, I take ownership of what happened, but there was an enmeshment there. So again, just speaking to the stories of how we like to evolve the story to feed our narrative. And when we change it around and ask, is this true? If we switch it round, is it true? Is our story a lie? Okay, and you just begin to look at it from another perspective. What that does is, again, it asks you to detach from your story and your narrative, to look at it truly from a centered, heartfelt perspective from the other narrative, and then ask yourself, okay, cool, could that possibly be true? Could that person's story be true? Most of the time we will find that the answer is yes. Yes, that person's story and their narrative is true, okay? Because obviously it is all one. We're merely experiencing it as a dualistic perspective, I guess. And so it's really powerful. The point I'm trying to make is once you've decided, or once you've had a look at that, so you've detached from your story, you've created space and actually held space for the other side of the story, you are then sitting at a beautiful space where you can exercise spiritual maturity. And this space is basically going, cool, you can share that you've done this exercise, making sure that it's not coming from the ego, making sure that you don't need that person to know that you've done this full exercise and you've come to a neutral point and thank you very much. Of course, depends on your friendship, your relationship, etc., etc. But you can share that you've done that, or you can just detach and know that you've come to the conclusion yourself, which has created a beautiful peace point for yourself, right, and put you back into neutrality. And this is where this sort of spiritual maturity comes in, and this discernment of really asking, okay, cool, now that I've looked at both sides, I've fed both sides, I see both sides, I've held space for both sides. You kind of come to a space where you can let go and release both sides and come to a decision-making point of going, awesome, where to from here? How do I make the next experience with this person grander, more fulfilled, higher in its frequency without these stories. Clearing the story, clearing the space of that. And you may need to speak to that person to fully clear it, to fully clear the energy of that. So again, this is just a little exercise that's super, super powerful. Just remember, when we are locked in our own stories, we feed that story delicious food, sugar toppings and hundreds and thousands, and it becomes a juicy, juicy story. Be careful of if you are doing that. Be careful how many people you tell that story. Be careful where you are enmeshing. Come to your center point, do the work, and yeah, clear the energy of old stories. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to the channels below. The Ascension Teachings will be coming out soon. Follow me on the decentralized platform called Library. You know, I know I'm on YouTube and all of these things, but these are still censored channels. So if you can begin the migration process and break your programming just a little bit, sticking your toes in the water, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. Lots of love.